And relax. You made it to your seat. You didn't miss your flight. So what do you think about now? Are you excited about the adventure that you're on, or the work trip that you're taking, or looking forward to the people that you're going to see at the other end of your flight? Flying is exciting. Flying feels like freedom, for some. But for me, and for people like me, flying is an entirely different experience. Disabled travellers regularly feel they're victims of discrimination.
People want to be asked before they get pushed. It's scary, someone just comes and pushes you.
It's a crisis moment. Disabled passengers are left stranded on planes.
I've just been abandoned. I have no idea what's going on. Help!
We landed at 6 o'clock. It is now 6:45. I am still on the plane.
Everyone's left. I saw my chair roll under the plane, unattended.
We're treated like second-class citizens and denied boarding.
They have refused to let me on their flight because I'm attached to fluids, medical equipment.
My chair is apparently 4 inches too tall to be loaded onto the plane.
We're not getting on the flight today.
We're treated like luggage, like cattle, and this can't continue anymore.
And too often, we have our wheelchairs broken.
My chair was damaged beyond repair.
This is the shocking, shameful, and somewhat secret reality of flying with a disability. So my name is Sophie Morgan. I'm a TV presenter, I'm a producer, and I'm a travel writer. And I'm also a disability advocate, kind of because I have to be. You see, I wasn't born with my disability. Like most people who identify as disabled, I acquired my disability a little bit later in life. See, one minute I was an 18-year-old and I was celebrating my end-of-year exams at school, dreaming about traveling the world and maybe becoming a lawyer. And the next minute, I was in a car, upside down, in a field, and I had broken my back and I was paralyzed from the chest down. So overnight, I entered into this parallel universe. You see, I was in the same world, but as a paraplegic and full-time manual wheelchair user for life, it was a very different world. It wasn't designed for me, or built for me, or anyone like me. Now, I am living proof that disability, it can happen to anyone at any time. Now, it might not be permanent, like it was for me, but it could be temporary. You could break your leg, you could hurt your back, your eyesight could go, your hearing could go, you could get cancer or any other chronic illness. The fact is, disability is one of the lived experiences, one of the identities that we will all encounter at some time in our lives. Now, ever since I became disabled, I've been fighting to get back to that world that I used to live in, that life that I used to have. And I don't mean by fixing my disability. I'm not really fussed about doing that. I actually quite like being disabled. What I really mean is fixing the world around me so that I, and people like me, can participate fully in society. We can live in what we call a more equitable world, more inclusive world. Now, in my lived experience, there are some spaces that really do articulate exactly what I mean by when I say that we live in a parallel universe. And one of those spaces is an airport and on an aeroplane. And let me tell you what I mean by that. So as you just saw in that clip, if you are a wheelchair user, an airline, by law, can refuse you on the grounds of safety. In fact, air travel is the only remaining form of transportation where we must be separated from our devices. I'm going to repeat that. Air travel is the only remaining form of transportation where we must be separated from our mobility devices. It's also perfectly legal for people with very little, if any, training to manhandle us and our very, very important and expensive equipment. Now, to give you some context, this manual chair that I'm sitting in, this costs about £5,000. Some wheelchairs can cost tens of thousands of pounds. And airlines are capped in how much they can actually repay us if they do damage our stuff. Some airlines will only pay out to about £2,000. And if we do get this compensation to fix our equipment, it can take weeks, months, sometimes even years for it to get fixed. And what do you do while that's happening? These are not the kind of things that you can just buy off the shelf. When we fly, we're also open to some incredibly invasive questions. In fact, just flying over here for my TED Talk, at check-in, I was asked what was wrong with me. How far could I walk? In the past, going through security, I've had people point at me. What's wrong with you? Why don't you walk? Why can't she walk? What's wrong with your legs? Get up. Stand up. This is really common. I'd also like to say, on an aeroplane, there's no standard obligation for there to be an accessible toilet on every single plane, certainly not on smaller planes. So when I'm sitting in my aeroplane seat, I'm not thinking about, what wine I might be having with my meal or what film I might be enjoying on the in-flight entertainment system. I'm sitting there thinking about all of the things that could possibly go wrong. You see, sitting in my aeroplane seat, I've been separated from my device. My wheelchair, as is the process, certainly in the UK, is down in the hold. And out of my sight, I have no idea what's going to happen to it. I mean, you think losing luggage is annoying? Imagine losing a wheelchair. Furthermore, sitting in my seat, I'm not able to mobilize. I'm not able to get around the plane. So I'm thinking, how am I going to get to the loo? What if I can't get to the loo? Imagine you came here today and I said to you when you sat down, I'm sorry, you're not allowed to go to the loo for the next 6 hours. How would you feel? Would you have even come here today knowing that that was a risk? The fact is, when I fly, I'm not having a great time. I'm nervous. I feel vulnerable. In fact, I feel disabled because that environment has not been designed with someone like me in mind. Now, last year, my worst nightmare came true. My wheelchair was broken 3 times. And my wheelchair is my legs. Without it, my life stops. I can't go anywhere. And this happens far more often than you might think. In fact, in the US alone, every single day, dozens of wheelchairs are lost, broken, and damaged. And I have to ask, if non-disabled people's legs were getting broken at the same rate as our wheelchairs were getting broken, there would be an outcry, right? There would. But for us, damage and injury is just a normalized part of the travel experience. Now, as a result, a lot of wheelchair users are choosing not to fly. Well, I get it. But for some, it's not a matter of choice. Airlines, like I said, can refuse you if your wheelchair is deemed too big, too heavy, too tall, too wide, the battery's the wrong size and shape, and also if you have the wrong disability. If you can't transfer out of your chair into a seat safely and travel safely, then you're grounded. And look, this isn't just about people going on holiday. When we fly now, it's part of our day-to-day experience. We have to fly for work. We have to fly for medical reasons, perhaps to see friends and family. And disabled people are getting left behind as a result of this. And it is actually a matter of life and death. Yes, there have been some disabled people who have died as a result of the failings of the airlines. So, why is this happening? Airlines know about this problem. Trust me, they do. They made the problem. And governments know about this problem. Trust me, they do, because we have been telling them about it for decades. And I do have to ask, if an airline CEO or a government official had to starve or dehydrate themselves just to be able to fly with dignity, do you think we'd still be in this mess? I don't think so. So after my wheelchair was broken, I decided to use my platform on national television and talk about what was going on. And I started a campaign called Rights on Flights to try and hold airlines to account, to signpost to some of the solutions. Now, Rights on Flights has taken me all over the place. I've been meeting with advocates and with government and with airlines, and I've gone from 10 Downing Street all the way to the White House. And one of the things that Rights on Flights is asking for is for the laws that are meant to protect us in the air to be changed. Because you might not know this, But the Disabilities Act, as it was once known, and now the Equalities Act in the UK, it doesn't apply in the air. So we have to change that. And Rights on Flights is campaigning to change not just the experience for wheelchair users, but for all types of people with different disabilities. So for example, we want in-flight entertainment systems to be accessible. So if you're blind or low vision, you can enjoy them. But for safety briefings to be accessible. So if you're deaf or hard of hearing, you don't miss them. And also for airports to be more accessible. And for training to be mandated so this problem can stop happening. Now, one of the things that I'm most excited about, personally, is the campaign is asking for a space to be created on board an aeroplane for us to be able to travel in our chairs, much like we can on a bus or in a taxi or on a train. And this is what that could look like. You see, this seat that I was sitting in earlier, this is no standard seat. This is an Air for All system. It looks pretty simple in principle, but it has taken a long time for this to be created. It has been designed by Delta Flight Products and a consortium of others for wheelchair users to be able to roll on a plane in our manual or in our power chairs and be strapped down and travel in our chairs should we choose to. And the exciting thing about this is it is on track to be approved by the US regulator as soon as the end of this year. However, and here's the catch, as yet, not one single airline has committed to adopting this solution. And without laws to mandate it, what are we going to do? We're going to have to depend on the airlines to do the right thing. Now the question is, will they? So the fight for rights on flights does continue. Now look, as an advocate, I'll use any tool I can to be able to make change. And one of the greatest tools that I have at my disposal is TV. So last year, I presented and produced, alongside the actress and producer Reese Witherspoon, her production company Hello Sunshine, a documentary that would share this situation. It would tell the story of my campaign. It would expose this shocking treatment that we're going through as wheelchair users, but it would also signpost to the solutions. Now, Fight to Fly went out on Channel 4 last year, and it was really well received by the press and by the disabled community. But it also invited some backlash. I've been labelled a troublemaker by the industry. I've been told to pipe down by the government. My articles have been labelled inflammatory, and I've been called an entitled cripple on social media. Now, at first, I'm not going to lie, that stung. You know, that really stung. I was really offended. But on reflection, I think that's accurate. I am an entitled cripple. And the reason why I say that is, I do feel entitled to be able to travel. I do feel entitled to be able to take up space. And I do feel entitled to rights, on flights and anywhere. You see, for me, this is more than just about flying. I kind of see an aeroplane as a metaphor, you know, like a microcosm of society. Don't we all deserve a space? Don't we all deserve rights? You see, when you become disabled, and look, it might not be you, it could be your grandparents, it could be your parents, it could be your partner, it could be your pal, it could be your kid. When it happens, what you'll learn is what I learned, is that it's not just our bodies that disable us. It is the built environment around us as well. It is the systems that we're in. And it is the people within those systems. You're also going to learn that those barriers I talk about, you might not notice them at the moment, but they are everywhere, trust me. But the good news is, those barriers, they were mostly created and designed by us. So they can and they must be dismantled by us. Disability rights are a fight for everybody's rights. Disabled advocates, aka us entitled cripples, look, we know this to be true, which is why we are doing the work, so that when you become disabled, your world doesn't disable you further. And you should help us, because one day you might be helping yourself. Thank you.